The shy virgin at 18 walked in while the rich cowboy bathed and found her heart beating only for him. Part 1. Snow over Copper Creek, the wind came first. It did not whisper. It did not warn. It rolled across the wide Wyoming plains like a living thing, low and angry, bending the tall, dry grass flat against the frozen earth. Then the snow followed. Not soft flakes drifting from a peaceful sky, but a hard, slashing storm that moved sideways, biting into skin and stealing breath from lungs. By the time the tired wagon carrying preacher Nathan Harper and his daughter Eliza creaked into the small mining town of Copper Creek in November of 1883, the world had turned into nothing but white fury and bitter cold. Eliza Harper was 18 years old, quiet, sheltered, and raised on scripture and duty. She sat hunched beneath a thin wool shawl that had once been bright blue, but now looked as faded as the hope that had brought them west. Drought had killed their Nebraska farm. Debt had followed like a shadow. Copper Creek was meant to be their new beginning. But as she looked at the blurred shapes of rough wooden buildings fighting against the storm, it felt more like the end of something. "We're here, Eliza girl," her father said, his voice cracked by wind and worry. Nathan Harper was a tall man, worn thin by faith and hardship. His eyes were kind, but fear lived behind them now. He had promised his daughter a fresh start. Instead, he had brought her into a storm. The boarding house, run by stern Mrs. Quinn, offered them a narrow room with 2 cots. The common room below smelled of wet wool, bacon grease, and cheap coffee. The pot-bellied stove gave off enough warmth to feel like mercy. Eliza watched as her father counted out coins with trembling hands. Money meant to last weeks vanished in seconds. Shame burned in her chest, sharp and familiar. Later that evening, Mrs. Quinn sent her to fetch water from the well behind the building. The wind clawed at her skirt as she stepped outside. Snow spun in wild circles beneath the dim yellow light spilling from the saloon next door. That was when she saw them. 2 men stepped into the alley beside the saloon. One she recognized from town whispers already. Deputy Jeb Crowley. Heavy, red-faced, eyes always searching for advantage. The other man stood tall in a fine dark coat that looked too expensive for Copper Creek. His posture was straight, his face sharp like a hawk's. Silas Blackthorne. Eliza pressed herself into the shadows, meaning only to avoid notice, but the wind carried their voices clearly. "The last shipment is in the warehouse," Blackthorne said in a low, steady tone. "The preacher is the perfect cover. No one suspects a man of God." Crowley grunted. "He'll serve his purpose." Blackthorne handed him a leather pouch. It clinked softly. As Crowley grabbed it, his glove slipped. In the saloon's light, Eliza saw black dust smeared across the leather. Thick and greasy like coal. Her heart pounded. "The railroad needs this land cleared," Blackthorne added. "The town needs to learn cooperation." Then they were gone, swallowed by snow. Eliza hurried back inside, her thoughts racing. The pouch, the coal dust, the preacher as cover. She did not understand everything, but she understood danger. Before dawn, the storm was still raging when chaos exploded outside. Shouting, splintering wood, horses. Through the frosted window, she saw riders storming the general store warehouse. The Copper Creek boys, outlaws who appeared and vanished like ghosts. Within minutes, it was over. Then came the pounding knock. Deputy Crowley filled their doorway like a dark omen. 2 large men stood behind him. "Nathan Harper," he said loudly, "you're under arrest." Eliza felt the world tilt. "On what charge?" her father asked, stunned. "Aiding the robbery. Witness says you gave the layout." It was a lie, clear and ugly. "No!" Eliza cried. "We just arrived. He's done nothing." Crowley's eyes slid toward her, cold, measuring. "That's what they all say." They dragged her father out into the frozen dawn. The door slammed shut behind them. The town stayed silent. No one helped. Fear ruled Copper Creek, and it wore Silas Blackthorn's shadow. Eliza sat alone in the boarding house common room, the fire offering no warmth against the ice inside her chest. Tears burned, but she refused to break. Then a soft voice spoke from the corner. "They will not help you." An older woman sat there, silver hair braided down her back. Strong dark eyes filled with quiet wisdom. "I am Donna Rosa," she said. "I work at the Triple R Ranch." Eliza wiped her cheeks. "My father is innocent." "I know," Donna Rosa replied calmly. "And there is one man in this valley who does not bow to Silas Blackthorn." "Who?" "Ethan McCrae." The name felt heavy. "He is a hard man," Donna Rosa continued. "Quiet, strong, but just. Go to him. Tell him what you saw." Outside, the storm still howled, but hope flickered. Eliza wrapped her thin shawl tight and stepped back into the white fury. Snow blinded her. Wind stole her breath. She stumbled more than she walked. Wolves howled somewhere in the distance, her boots filled with ice. Her body shook violently, but she kept moving. Finally, through the endless storm, she saw it. A faint golden lantern glow. A house. She did not remember reaching the porch, only the feel of rough wood beneath her frozen hands. The door opened. A tall, broad-shouldered figure stood in the warm light. She saw his face for a brief second. Weathered. Strong jaw. Eyes the color of a winter sky. Then everything went black. When she awoke, warmth surrounded her. A thick blanket. A roaring stone fireplace. The scent of leather and wood smoke. Pain pulsed in her shoulder. She opened her eyes. The man from the doorway sat beside her, calmly stitching a deep gash on her shoulder. His large calloused hands moved with careful precision. "You took a bad fall," he said evenly. "Lie still." His voice was low and steady. Heat rushed to her cheeks. A stranger tending her wounds, her patched dress, her weakness laid bare. "Thank you," she whispered. He tied off the thread neatly. "Don't thank me yet," he replied quietly. "Sheltering folks hasn't always brought me good fortune." He stood and stepped toward the firelight. His fingers brushed an old cracked pocket watch resting on the mantel. Eliza watched him. This was Ethan McCrae, and she had just carried her trouble straight to his door. Part 2. The girl who walked in. The storm did not end that night. For another full day, the wind screamed across the plains, and the Triple R Ranch stood like a lone ship in a white sea. Inside, Eliza drifted in and out of sleep, while fever fought through her body. Each time she opened her eyes, she saw movement in the room. Donna Rosa tending the fire. Ethan McCrae standing near the window, silent and watchful. He kept his distance, yet she felt his presence like a wall of strength between her and the world. When the storm finally broke, the silence outside was almost frightening. The sun rose over a land buried in snow so bright it hurt the eyes. Everything looked clean, untouched, as if evil had never walked it. But evil had, and it was wearing a badge. Ethan stepped outside that morning to check his cattle. The cold air cut sharp against his lungs. As he reached the main gate, something nailed to the heavy timber post caught his attention. A paper. He tore it down and read. Foreclosure notice, unpaid taxes, land dispute, signed by Deputy Jeb Crowley. Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew every dollar that had crossed his land. He knew every inch of boundary line. This was not law. This was a threat. He crumpled the paper slowly and looked back toward the ranch house where the preacher's daughter lay recovering. Her trouble had just become his. Inside, Eliza forced herself out of bed the next morning. Her shoulder ached, but she would not lie idle while her father sat in a jail cell. She found Donna Rosa kneading dough in the kitchen and asked for work. The older woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded. You work, you heal, Donna Rosa said. Eliza scrubbed floors, washed dishes, folded blankets. Her hands stung from cold water and rough soap, but the work steadied her racing thoughts. On the third morning, Donna Rosa handed her a kettle of steaming water. Take this to the washroom. Mister, McCrae likes hot water after chores. Eliza nodded and carried the heavy kettle down the hallway. Steam rose in soft white clouds, warming her face. The washroom door was slightly open. She assumed it was empty. She pushed it open with her shoulder and froze. The room was thick with steam. Through the haze, she saw him. Ethan McCrae stood beside a large wooden basin. Water glistened on his broad back. Muscles carved by years of labor shifted beneath his skin. Faint scars crossed his shoulders like pale lines from battles long past. Time stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. It was not sin she felt, not lust. It was something deeper, shockingly intimate. She was seeing him unguarded. Not the rancher, not the protector, just the man. A small gasp escaped her lips. He turned instantly, quick as lightning. A towel rose in one smooth motion to shield himself. Their eyes met. His were wide with surprise, but not anger. Heat rushed to her cheeks so fiercely she thought she might faint. The kettle trembled in her hands. Miss Harper, he said evenly, though his voice carried a rough edge. If you'd wait outside. She stumbled backward, words tumbling over each other in apology. She shut the door and leaned against the hallway wall, heart pounding so loudly she feared it might burst from her chest. A moment later, the door opened again. He was dressed now, shirt half-buttoned, hair still damp. He avoided her gaze. The latch is loose, he said. That's on me. No, she whispered. It was my fault. I should have knocked. Silence hung thick between them. But something had changed. The space between stoic rancher and frightened preacher's daughter had cracked open. In embarrassment, they had become simply a man and a woman. Later that morning, as they sat at the long wooden table, Ethan finally spoke. You never told me why your father was arrested. Eliza took a slow breath and told him everything. The journey west, the alley, the pouch smeared with coal dust, Silas Blackthorne's words about clearing land. Ethan listened without interruption. When she finished, he rested his fingers on the cracked pocket watch lying near his hand. Blackthorne works for the railroad, he said quietly. They want this valley. The mine in the foothills needs clear land. Your father was chosen. A preacher makes a perfect scapegoat. Anger flickered behind his winter-colored eyes. I'll ride to the next county, he continued. There's a lawyer who owes me a favor, and Dr. May Calloway will speak on your father's condition. Crowley won't like his business brought into daylight. Hope stirred in Eliza's chest, but she would not sit waiting. In the days that followed, she learned the rhythms of ranch life. Tommy Pike, the 12-year-old stable hand, taught her how to brush a horse properly and tie a saddle knot. One afternoon, Ethan found her struggling to lift a heavy saddle. "If you're staying here," he said, taking it easily from her hands, "you need more than chores. You need to protect yourself." He led her behind the barn to a small clearing. In his hand was a Colt revolver. The weight of it shocked her. Her father had preached against such tools, but out here, survival spoke louder than sermons. Ethan stood behind her, adjusting her grip. His hands covered hers, firm and steady. "Focus on the sight," he murmured near her ear. "Don't think about what you're aiming at. Squeeze. Don't pull." The first shot exploded through the quiet air. The recoil jarred her arm. She nearly dropped the gun, but she tried again and again. By afternoon, she was striking the tin can more often than not. When she handed the revolver back, their fingers brushed. A spark passed between them. That night, Tommy rode back from town with grim news. "Blackthorn's posted auction notices," he said breathlessly. "In 2 weeks he's selling every foreclosed property, including the Harper claim." The clock had started ticking. That evening, Ethan studied the forged foreclosure notice under lamplight. He compared it to an older deed from his locked chest. "Eliza," he said, motioning her closer. "Look here." Under magnification, the county seal differed. The eagle's talon was blurred. "It's a forgery," Ethan breathed. For the first time since her father's arrest, Eliza saw something like victory in his expression. "We're going to town tomorrow," he said firmly. "I'll post your father's bond and stand as guarantor. Let's see how Blackthorn handles sunlight." He was declaring war, and he was doing it for her. As the fire crackled and shadows danced across the walls, Eliza realized something that frightened her more than guns or outlaws. Her heart no longer raced from fear alone. It beat harder whenever he stepped near. "Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know." Part 3. Fire on the Prairie. The morning Ethan rode into Copper Creek to post Nathan Harper's bond, the entire town felt different. Word had spread fast. Silas Blackthorn sat inside the town hall, with his polished boots and cold smile, certain the law still bent in his direction. Deputy Crowley stood near him, his wounded pride hidden behind a stiff jaw. But this time, Ethan McCrae did not walk in alone. He walked in with evidence. The forged foreclosure notice lay on the table beside an official land deed from his ranch. The difference in the county seal was clear under magnification. The eagle's talon on Blackthorn's document was blurred. Dr. May Calloway testified about Nathan's worsening condition in jail. Liam O'Connell spoke of fraudulent shipments and secret night wagons coated in coal dust. Then Eliza took the stand. She did not tremble. She told the story of the alley, the leather pouch, the coal smudge, the words she had overheard about clearing land for the railroad. Silas Blackthorn's smirk slowly disappeared. The judge, pale and sweating, realized the trap closing around him. Federal investigators would soon arrive. Forged documents meant prison. The hearing was adjourned for investigation. And before sunset, Silas Blackthorn fled Copper Creek. Deputy Crowley was arrested. Several of the Copper Creek boys were taken into custody. But victory did not feel complete. Ethan and Eliza returned to the ranch under a sky thick with wind and tension. That afternoon, Tommy Pike came running from the south pasture. "Smoke!" he shouted. "Near the spring!" They rushed outside. A thick, dark plume rose from the southern edge of the property. a grass fire, set deliberately. The wind carried it fast and hungry toward the heart of the ranch. It was Blackthorn's final move. If he could not steal the land legally, he would destroy it. The fire roared like a living beast. Orange walls of flame devoured dry winter grass. Heat slammed against their faces. "Dig a fire break," Ethan shouted. Liam grabbed a spade. Tommy followed. Donna Rosa soaked blankets in water from the spring. Eliza pulled on work gloves and ran straight toward the advancing flames. Ethan tried to stop her. "Stay back!" "No," she said firmly. "You can't do this alone." There was no time to argue. They worked with desperate focus, digging, beating back smaller flames. Smoke filled their lungs. Ash coated their skin. The wind shifted without warning. Embers leapt across the creek bed and caught the brush beside the main barn. The barn exploded into flame. "Ethan!" Eliza screamed as he rushed forward with a soaked blanket. He beat at the burning timber. Sparks flew. Smoke thickened. Then he staggered. He swayed once, then collapsed. For a moment the world stopped. The fire roared closer. Eliza ran into the smoke without thinking. Heat scorched her face. Her lungs screamed for air. She found him lying motionless. He was too heavy to lift. So she dragged him, inch by inch across burning earth, her arms shaking, her body shielding his from sparks, tears streaming down soot-streaked cheeks. "Not him," she whispered. "Please, not him." She pulled him beyond the fire's reach and collapsed beside him, pressing her ear to his chest. Thump, thump, thump. His heart beat steady beneath her cheek, and in that moment, through smoke and terror, something became clear inside her. Her own heart beat in the same rhythm. It had been for days now, beating only for him. Then, as if heaven itself had chosen mercy, the wind shifted again. The fire turned back over its own burned path. The creek bed held. The main house was spared. By sunset, the south pasture was blackened earth. The barn stood in charred ruins. But the spring still flowed. They carried Ethan inside. Smoke had filled his lungs. Fever followed. For 2 days, Eliza never left his side. She bathed his forehead with cool water. Brewed herbal tea Donna Rosa taught her. Sat in silence as he drifted in and out of restless dreams. On the second night, he opened his eyes fully. They were weak, but clear. She leaned closer. "My heart," she whispered softly, unable to hold the truth any longer. "It beats only for you." He could not speak, but his hand tightened around hers. It was enough. Weeks later, with federal law now cleaning up the corruption in Copper Creek, Silas Blackthorn was found dead in the canyon floodwaters. Miles north. His empire collapsed with him. Judge Miller was removed from office. Deputy Crowley sentenced. The railroad scheme exposed. Summer arrived slowly over Wyoming. Green shoots pushed through the burned pasture. The town helped rebuild the barn. Fear turned into community. Ethan recovered fully. The haunted quiet in him softened. He opened irrigation from his spring to neighboring homesteads. Shared water instead of hoarding it. Eliza opened a small schoolhouse beside the ranch. Children filled the wooden benches with laughter and learning. One evening, beneath a sky painted gold and purple, Ethan stood beside the spring. He held his old cracked pocket watch in his hand, the symbol of a past he carried too long. Without a word, he tossed it into the deep, clear water. Then he turned to her. "Marry me, Eliza." Her answer came like a summer breeze. Yes. Their wedding was simple. Donna Rosa rang a small silver bell. Tommy read from a worn book. Her father blessed them with steady voice and proud eyes. As the sun dipped below the plains, Ethan leaned down and kissed his bride. It was not a kiss of fire or urgency. It was a promise of shared mornings, of storms faced together, of a heart that had once beaten in fear, now beating steady in love. And on the wide Wyoming plains, where wind once brought only danger, it now carried something else: hope.